If you want an avoidant to realize your worth, the first keynote is simple but uncomfortable. You have to stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and stop trying to earn their emotional presence. Because chasing doesn't prove your value, it proves your availability. And availability is exactly what allows an avoidant to keep you in the cycle without fully stepping up. The more you pursue, the more they can stay half in, half out, because your pursuit becomes a safety net. It tells their nervous system, even if I withdraw, I won't lose them. And as long as they believe they won't lose you, there is no urgency for growth, no reason to confront their fear of intimacy, no pressure to become consistent. Avoidants are often triggered by emotional intensity, not because you're wrong for feeling, but because their nervous system interprets emotional closeness as danger. When you chase, you increase intensity. You send more messages. You ask for clarity. You try to talk things through. You explain your pain in detail. You offer solutions. You try to be understood. But to an avoidant who has low tolerance for vulnerability, all of that can feel like being cornered. So they do what they've always done. They retreat. They go quiet. They delay. They detach. And your chasing then gets worse. Because you feel the distance, you panic, you push harder. Now you're both trapped. You're chasing for security. They're withdrawing for safety. The moment you stop chasing, the pattern breaks. Not because you're playing a game, but because you stop feeding the dynamic that keeps them comfortable. Your silence isn't a punishment. It's a boundary. It's you choosing dignity over anxiety. It's you deciding that love should not require you to beg for basic communication. And when you remove your pursuit, you remove the avoidance ability to regulate the relationship through distance alone. This is where many people get it wrong. They think stopping the chase means becoming cold, rude, or manipulative. It doesn't. It means becoming calm and clear. It means you stop sending emotional paragraphs to someone who answers with silence. It means you stop trying to convince someone to value what they already have. It means you stop forcing intimacy onto someone who keeps dodging it. Because you can't talk an avoidant into emotional safety. Emotional safety is built through willingness, consistency, and maturity. If they don't bring that, your effort becomes self-abandonment. When you stop chasing, something psychological shifts inside them. The avoidance nervous system is used to you being the emotional engine. You reach out. You repair. You reopen the door. You soften the tension. You keep hope alive. When that stops, they feel a new discomfort, uncertainty. And uncertainty activates their attachment system. Suddenly they wonder where you are. Suddenly they notice the silence. Suddenly the comfort of your presence is missing. And now, for the first time, they have to face a truth. Access to you is not guaranteed. That's what triggers realizing your worth in the only way that matters. Not through your words, but through consequences. Your worth becomes real to them when they feel the cost of treating you like an option. And you can't create that cost while you're still chasing, because chasing protects them from consequences. It reassures them you'll keep trying no matter how little they give. But here is the part that protects you. The goal is not to make them suffer. The goal is to stop suffering yourself. Because if you stop chasing only to get a reaction, you're still attached to the outcome. You're still giving them control over your peace. True detachment is when you stop chasing and start rebuilding your life, not waiting for them to notice, but because you finally noticed yourself. So how does this keynote look in real life? It looks like one honest statement, then silence and consistency. It looks like, I care, but I need consistent communication and effort. I'm stepping back from hot and cold. And then you actually step back. No more explanations. No more bargaining. No more long texts. No more emotional labor. You become polite, brief, and unavailable for confusion. You stop rewarding breadcrumbs with full access. If they truly value you, this creates a decision point. They either step into accountability and effort, or they disappear. Either way, you win, because you end the pattern that was draining your self-worth. And in that moment, you stop trying to trigger them to see your value, and you start living like you already know it. The second keynote is where most people fail, and it's also where your power becomes undeniable. Become predictable in standards, not predictable in availability. An avoidant gets comfortable when your availability is guaranteed. They can disappear, return, give crumbs, take space, and still expect you to be there. That expectation is what keeps you in the option position. But standards change the game. Standards tell the nervous system of an avoidant, access is earned, not assumed. And when your standards are consistent, not emotional, not dramatic, not on and off, they begin to feel something they rarely feel in relationships: real consequences paired with real structure. Predictable availability says, no matter what you do, you can still reach me. Predictable standards say, no matter what you say, you must match it with behavior. This is the difference between being loved and being used as comfort. Comfort is when they want you when they're lonely. Love is when they show up even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when they're triggered. Avoidants often avoid responsibility by living in the gray zone. The gray zone is where they can give you just enough to keep you hopeful, but not enough to require them to change. The gray zone is, I miss you, without commitment. I'm busy, without a plan. I care, without consistency. Let's see, instead of a decision. If you're always available, the gray zone works for them. They can keep you emotionally engaged while staying emotionally protected. But consistent standards collapse the gray zone. They force clarity, because the gray zone can't survive when you stop rewarding it. That's why standards must be calm and repeated. Not begged, not argued. Repeated. Your standards are not speeches, they are rules you live by. They are simple, direct, and consistent. For example, I don't do hot and cold. I don't do disappearing. I don't do vague contact. If we talk like adults. If we rebuild, it's with consistent action. These are not threats. They are boundaries. And boundaries are not meant to control them. Boundaries are meant to protect you. Here's the key: avoidants respect what is stable, not what is emotional. When you swing between intense love and intense anger, you are still emotionally centered on them. They can feel your attachment. They can feel your dependence. And that doesn't motivate them to grow. It motivates them to manage you. They will do the minimum to calm you down, then retreat again. But when you become steady, when your mood is not dependent on their attention, when your response is polite but firm, when your standards are consistent, and your availability is not automatic, it forces them to confront a new reality. You are no longer easy to keep without effort. And this is where their realizing your worth actually begins. They start to associate you with something rare: self-respect. They realize you can't be kept through comfort alone. They realize you don't negotiate your dignity. They realize your love is not free access. It's a privilege that comes with responsibility. That realization can trigger growth, but it can also trigger resistance. Some avoidants will test your boundaries harder when they feel them. They'll disappear and return to see if you still soften. They'll send breadcrumbs to see if you still respond warmly. They'll act offended. Why are you being like this? Because they want you to feel guilty for having standards. This is not proof you're wrong. This is proof the boundary is working. Standards also protect you from one of the biggest traps: mistaking words for change. Avoidants can be very persuasive when they panic. They can send long messages when they feel you slipping. They can promise growth. They can say, I'll do better. But if you don't have standards, you'll accept the words and drop the boundary, and then the pattern returns. Standards keep you from being hypnotized. They make you ask, what is the plan? What is the behavior? What is the follow-through? They shift you from emotional hope to evidence. Being predictable in standards also means you stop punishing and start choosing. You don't lash out. You don't block impulsively. You don't create chaos. You simply become consistent with what you allow. If they disappear, you don't chase. If they breadcrumb, you don't reward it. If they want access, they come with clarity and consistency. If they can't, you step back without drama. This keynote matters because it turns, triggering them, into something healthy. You're not trying to make them jealous or hurt them. You're making your worth visible through behavior. You're showing, not telling, that you are not a placeholder. You're not a backup plan. You are a standard. And the right person will rise to meet that standard, while the wrong person will remove themselves. And both outcomes are a win for your peace. The third keynote is where your communication becomes a weapon of peace. Speak once, clearly, and then let behavior answer. Most people lose power with avoidance because they speak too much. They explain too much. They repeat themselves in different ways, hoping the right words will finally unlock the avoidant's heart. But an avoidant doesn't change because you delivered the perfect paragraph. They change because they experience a consistent boundary and a real consequence. That's why one clean message, followed by calm action, is more powerful than 50 emotional messages followed by the same availability. When you keep talking, you create two problems. First, you train the avoidant to wait you out. They learn that if they stay silent long enough, you'll fill the space. You'll send another message. You'll soften. You'll clarify. You'll apologize for your own needs. The second problem is that the more you explain, the more you begin to negotiate your own reality. You start writing like a lawyer. You start proving your feelings. You start begging to be understood. And the moment you beg to be understood, you hand your power away, because now your peace depends on their validation. A single, clear statement does the opposite. It communicates self-respect. It communicates emotional maturity. It communicates that you are not trying to control them. You are simply stating what you require to stay connected. It sounds like, I care about you, but I need consistent communication and effort. I'm not available for hot and cold anymore. That's it. No long history, no 10 examples, no emotional essays, just truth. Because the point is not to convince them. The point is to define your standard. This keynote is powerful because it forces the relationship into reality. Reality is behavior. Reality is consistency. Reality is whether someone shows up, not whether they say beautiful words. When you speak once and step back, you remove the fog of conversation. You stop living in promises and intentions. You allow actions to reveal the truth. And here is what avoidants often do when you speak once clearly. They test you. They may respond vaguely, I understand, but then do nothing. They may say, I've been busy, to see if you'll accept excuses. They may act offended, so you're giving up on me, to see if guilt will pull you back into chasing. They may throw a breadcrumb, a sweet message without a plan. The test is simple. Will you collapse your boundary to keep connection alive? This is where, let behavior answer, becomes the rule that saves you. If their behavior doesn't match their words, you don't argue. You don't lecture. You don't demand. You simply follow your boundary. You become consistent. Because avoidance, and honestly many people, don't learn through speeches, they learn through patterns. If every time they disappear you chase, they learn you'll always chase. If every time they breadcrumb you reward it with full access, they learn breadcrumbs work. But if every time they offer inconsistency you calmly step back, they learn that inconsistency loses access. This is not manipulation. This is consequences. It's like teaching someone how to treat you without begging them to do it. You're not trying to punish. You're trying to protect. You're not trying to scare them. You're trying to be aligned with your own worth. And the moment you stop over-communicating, you stop doing emotional labor for someone else's growth. There's also a deep psychological shift that happens in you when you speak once and stop. You stop being in performance mode. You stop monitoring their mood, their tone, their replies. You stop trying to manage the relationship with your nervous system. You start returning to yourself. And that return is what makes you magnetic in a healthy way, because you become grounded. You become less reactive. You become less available for chaos. Your energy changes from, please choose me, to I choose myself. For an avoidant, that energy is startling. They're used to relationships where the other person is emotionally chasing, emotionally negotiating, emotionally proving. When you stop, you become unfamiliar. You become unhooked. And that can trigger them to recognize your value, because value becomes obvious when access is no longer guaranteed and the old cycle no longer works. But remember, this keynote is not about getting them back. It's about getting your power back. Speaking once, clearly, and letting behavior answer means you stop living in potential and start living in truth. If they step up, you'll see it in consistency. If they don't, you'll see it in absence. Either way, you stop wasting your life trying to extract effort from someone who only gives it when they're afraid of losing you. The fourth keynote is where most people finally win. Remove emotional access without being rude. This is the part that feels hard because it demands maturity, not drama. It demands that you stop giving someone the benefits of closeness, while they refuse the responsibilities of closeness. Emotional access is not just replying to messages. Emotional access is the way you make them feel important, the way you soothe them, the way you explain yourself, the way you keep them updated on your life, the way you stay available for late night conversations, the way you offer comfort after they disappear, the way you remain their safe place, even when they aren't safe for you. Avoidants often depend on emotional access more than they admit. Even when they act independent, many avoidants return to the person who once made them feel regulated. They might not want commitment, but they want comfort. They might not want emotional responsibility, but they want emotional safety. They might not want to be held accountable, but they want to know you still care. That's why they keep reaching out in vague ways, because they're checking if the emotional supply is still available. And if you keep giving emotional access, you keep rewarding the pattern. Here's how it usually looks. They disappear, then return with hey. You respond warmly because you missed them. They feel relief. Then they fade again. Or they give you a small compliment, and you open your heart. Or they act sad and you comfort them. Or they start a deep conversation, but only when it suits them, and you stay up late giving them therapy, pouring your heart out, giving them understanding. Then the next day they go cold. And you sit there confused, because you gave them intimacy, but they didn't give you stability. Removing emotional access is you deciding, I will no longer be the place you come to feel better while I feel worse. It doesn't mean you become mean. It means you become structured. It means you stop rewarding breadcrumbs with full emotional presence. You can be polite, brief, and calm. You can respond like a person with standards. Hope you're well. I'm busy. Take care. Short, respectful. No deep sharing. No long explanations. No emotional conversations that reopen your attachment. Because every time you give them that depth, you reconnect the bond while they keep the option to retreat whenever their fear returns. This is where your politeness is a secret weapon. Politeness prevents conflict. Conflict keeps you emotionally engaged. Avoidants often feed off the chaos of emotional discussions, not because they love chaos, but because chaos gives them an excuse to detach. They can say, "This is too much," and disappear again. But if you stay calm and polite, you remove the excuse. You don't give them the emotional storm that lets them justify distance. You simply maintain your boundary without drama. Removing emotional access also means you stop offering them your empathy as a service. This is big. Empaths often keep the connection alive through compassion. You understand their trauma. You understand their fear. You understand their childhood. You see the wounded part of them, and you want to love it. But understanding is not a license for someone to keep hurting you. Your empathy is not meant to be a hiding place for their inconsistency. If they want access to your tenderness, they must offer consistency, accountability, and effort. Otherwise, your tenderness becomes a tool they use to avoid change. So how do you remove access in real life? You stop being instantly available. You don't reply fast out of anxiety. You reply when you feel calm, or you don't reply at all if the message is vague. You stop accepting late-night emotional conversations that vanish in daylight. You stop sharing personal updates that make them feel close while they stay non-committal. You stop being their comfort person when they're lonely. You stop rescuing them from guilt. You stop letting them vent and then disappear. You stop being the emotional girlfriend or boyfriend without the emotional partnership. And here is where this keynote triggers recognition. Because when you remove emotional access, they finally feel the difference between losing the relationship and losing the comfort supply. They are forced to confront the fact that your presence is not free, that your warmth is not automatic, that your love is not something they can switch on and off based on their mood. And if they truly value you, this forces them to grow. They must become direct. They must become consistent. They must earn the closeness through behavior. If they don't value you, they will disappear when access is removed. And that is painful, but it is also clarity. Because someone who only stays when they can take from you was never building with you. They were feeding on you. Removing emotional access isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. It's the moment you stop offering intimacy to inconsistency and start protecting the healed version of you. The fifth keynote is where the trigger becomes real life. Let consequences happen naturally, without revenge, without speeches, without chasing. Consequences are the language avoidants understand most clearly, because consequences don't argue. They don't beg. They don't explain. They simply reveal reality. And when your goal is to make an avoidant realize your worth, the only realization that matters is the one that comes from losing access to you, not from hearing another emotional paragraph. Because an avoidant can listen to your feelings and still stay the same. But when your energy disappears, when your availability stops, when your emotional labor ends, they finally feel the cost of treating you like a safe option. Natural consequences start when you stop cushioning their behavior. Many people unknowingly protect an avoidant from consequences by staying kind in ways that become self-sacrificing. You respond quickly after they disappear. You forgive without repair. You accept vague check-ins. You stay friends while they keep benefiting from your warmth. You offer closure conversations that only soothe them. You keep the door cracked open because you don't want to be mean. But by doing that, you train them that inconsistent love still receives consistent access. You turn your heart into a safety net. And a safety net is comfortable, but comfort does not motivate change. Consequences are not punishment. They are the removal of unearned privileges. If someone doesn't communicate consistently, they don't get consistent access to you. If someone disappears, they don't return to full closeness with a single "hey." If someone wants emotional intimacy, they also need emotional responsibility. This is what consequences look like in the real world. Predictable, no drama, no insults, no revenge. Just a boundary that is actually enforced. When consequences happen naturally, an avoidant's nervous system experiences something new. Instead of "I can withdraw and still keep them," they face, "If I withdraw, I lose them." That shift is powerful. It activates their attachment system because uncertainty appears. They start wondering. They start missing. They start feeling the absence. And this is where many people get confused. Because they see the avoidance pain and think it means love. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it means loss of comfort. Either way, the consequence is doing its job. It is revealing the truth. If they truly value you, consequences can push them toward growth. They will become clearer. They will show more consistency. They will take more responsibility because they realize your presence is not automatic. They will understand that you are not a backup plan. And if they don't value you, consequences will push them away. They will disappear, because they only wanted the easy version of you, the version that stayed available no matter what. That outcome hurts, but it's also a win, because it removes the illusion and stops you from wasting years trying to earn what should be freely given in a healthy relationship. The most important part of this keynote is your mindset. Consequences only work when you are not using them as a performance. If you're silent but still watching their every move, checking if they noticed, hoping they suffer, you are still attached to their reaction. That's not freedom. That's just quiet chasing. Natural consequences are different. Natural consequences mean you move on with your life while the boundary holds itself. You don't create consequences to teach them a lesson. You create consequences because you finally respect yourself enough to stop paying the price of inconsistency. This is why building a full life matters so much in this keynote. When you stop cushioning them and start investing in yourself, your energy changes. You become less reactive, less available for chaos, less willing to accept crumbs. You don't need them to realize your worth, because you're living like you already know it. And paradoxically, that is when they are most likely to feel it. Because value is most visible when it is no longer begging to be seen. If they come back during consequences, you don't collapse the boundary. You don't give them full access because they miss you. Missing you is not proof of change. You require consistency over time. You require accountability. You require actions that match words. Because the goal is not to trigger them to chase you for a week. The goal is to ensure that if they return as a healthier person, not the same avoidant with a new speech. Natural consequences are the cleanest trigger, because they don't manipulate. They simply restore